Right, that's my murdering done for the evening. I see what's on telly. Oh, and you're still listening to the Dark Hour podcast.
Go on, you, get in that cupboard.
I don't want to. I don't.
What's in the cupboard?
And that was Muse there, and we are back.
We've had a few guesses.
We've had some guesses.
Let's start well. We've got Alan Peasbury. Is
Alan?
it a fine cheese?
Oh, Alan, it'd be lovely if it was, but it's not. Wrong, Alan. Keep guessing.
What else? We've got Travis Cod Merchant. Is it Hermione Granger? No.
Oh, I think that's wishful thinking there,
a
Travis. I
fictional
think you might have a little
character.
crush on old Hermione. Obviously, and yes, she doesn't exist.
That too. Anthony Table. Is it an old hat?
Anthony, he's texted before, Anthony. No, Anthony, it's not an old hat. I've had some guesses as well.
Okay.
I've had Miguel Prada, who said, is it the truth? But it's not the truth, no. And
It's a form of truth.
Well, kind of. And we've had Ronald Cosworth has been on.
Yes,
Rondon.
Ronald.
Yeah, old Ronald. And he said, is it a punnet of strawberries? And no, I don't know. Afraid it's not.
No, not quite.
And old Vic Mackey's been on. He said, is it marbles? And I can't read Sam's
wasn't
writing. I think it says Lacey Rybeck. Is it a stripper in a cake on the besieged American warship?
No.
And no, it's not.
Our cupboard this week is not quite that large.
No, it's not. No, it's not as big
We've
this
had
week.
a new one in the other ones.
It does expand and contract. It gets bigger when it
yeah.
needs to. And I'm going to stop talking before I
Okay,
say something
well,
I say regret.
We'll give you a clue because there's some good guesses. None of them right, of course, but that's exactly what we wanted. So, our first clue for today goes thus: we are roundish. Roundish.
So there you go.
Roundish.
We are roundish.
Roundish.
Roundish. So think of something roundish. Text in. Keep the text flooding in. And
Let's show. I'll say what we'll do. I think it's story time.
story time.
We're about halfway through the show.
halfway
What
through.
have we got this week?
We have a lovely story called The Skull, which is a little bit scary. So if you are easily frightened, please turn your radio off now. Don't stay with
No,
us.
don't do
Here
it.
it comes. Here's the story. This is The Skull. Come in. Come in. Sit by the fire. Warm yourself. The nights have been so dreadfully cold here of late. There's a beanbag over there if you'd like to get a little comfy. Maybe take off your shoes and I shall massage your feet. And permit me to tell you a story. A very scary story of a young boy and a skull. Little Derek Dimple was playing in his sandpit. The sun was shining brightly and the sand sparkled before him. Derek loved his sandpit. He loved how warm the granules were to his touch and the soft beige colour of the sand. More than anything else, though, Derek loved to bury his toys in the sand and then dig them back up, and it was in the middle of one such game that he came across something odd. Luke Skywalker, a truck, and Optimus Prime had already been rescued from the pit, when his tiny child's hand fell on something cold and smooth. He wiggled his chubby little digits further down into the sand and, clasping the object as firmly as he could, pulled it free from its grainy prison. He instantly dropped his discovery. A look of pure horror passed across young Derek's face, for staring up at him was a brilliantly preserved human skull. "Hello," it said. Derek jumped up and ran as fast as his little legs would carry him back into the house, crying all the way. It was 2 days before Derek completely stopped crying, and if they were honest, his parents had begun to tire of their wussy son's complaints. "Pull yourself together, lad," his father had shouted, when upon investigating the sandpit, had found it only to contain Derek's toys. "There's nothing out here to be scared of! Giant skull indeed! The way you ran in the house, I thought someone was interfering with ya!"
But it was there, Papa. I swear.
"I'll swear at you in a minute," said his dad. So he did. Several nights later, Derek lay awake in his bed, terrified of what he had seen. He was finally drifting off to sleep when he heard the same terrible voice that had spoken to him from the mouth of the skull. "Hello," it said. Derek sat bolt upright, his little eyes looking about the room. Perched on the edge of the desk, bathed in the white light of the moon, sat the skull. Its eye sockets dark and empty, its jaw shut tight. Derek opened his mouth as if to scream, but the skull quickly spoke.
Don't scream.
And for some reason, Derek didn't. He felt almost as if he was under a spell.
I won't hurt you.
And for some reason, Derek believed the magical skull.
All I want you to do,
Continued the skull.
is go to the shed, take a shovel, and whack the next door neighbor's dog over the head.
Derek screamed.
Okay.
The shrill voice of her child in distress pierced the dreams of Mrs. Dimple. She sprang from her bed like a young gazelle and charged into Derek's room. Derek was sat up in his bed, tears streaming from his eyes and pointing at his desk.
There, Mama! Can you see it? The skull! The skull!
Mrs. Dimple flicked on the light, yet there was nothing on the desk where her son was pointing. The next morning, Derek, still a little shocked by his late-night ordeal, sat at the table eating his cereal. He loved Golden Grahams, and had once asked his dad if he could change his name to Golden Graham to show his appreciation. His dad had said no, but not in those words. What his dad had actually said was, "No, you f***ing well can't." Remembering his dad's wise words, Derek shoveled another spoonful into his mouth, gave them his required 4 chews, and was about to swallow when his jaw dropped open. There, sitting at the head of the table, was the skull.
Hello.
It said like it always did. Derek frantically scanned the kitchen. His mother was nowhere to be seen, and his father had left for work long ago.
Don't panic. I won't hurt you.
Said the skull once again. Derek sat staring wide-eyed at his unusual table companion.
All I want you to do...
Derek cut the skull's familiar sentence short.
I won't do it!
He screamed, and he threw his bowl of his beloved cereal at the chair. The skull vanished. That day, Derek was to see the skull 5 more times. Once while in school, twice on the way home in the sweet shop and in a hedgerow, once while he was on the toilet, a particularly odd experience, and at the supper table. He didn't scream or interact, knowing his parents would not believe his now familiar story, and slowly the skull's words began to grind little Derek down.
Whack the dog with a spade. Whack the dog with a spade. Whack the dog with a spade!
That night, while his parents slept soundly, Derek crept out of the back door, the keys to the shed jangling in his hand. The door to the shed creaked open, and Derek shone his torch around inside. Seeing his dad's favourite shovel, he walked slowly over to it. It was just a quick hop over the fence, and he was in the next-door neighbour's garden. Bouncer, the neighbour's dog, was a small, lovely little beagle with a great lust for life. Derek spotted him, his face and paws protruding just a little from his beautifully built doghouse. Derek crept over. The dog was sound asleep. Reaching the sleeping hound, Derek drew the spade above his head, and with tears in his eyes, he stopped. It was at this moment that the skull appeared, perched precariously atop the doghouse.
Come on, Derek, what are you waiting for? It's only one little whack, bop, and that's it. You will never have to see me again as long as you shall live.
Promise?
Said Derek, crying as always.
Promise.
Said the skull. And with that, Derek summoned up all his strength and brought the spade crashing down on the dog's head. Suddenly, Derek was bathed in a bright white light. He dropped the shovel and shielded his eyes. His young brain soon realized what had happened. The swinging of the shovel must have turned the security light on. People stirred inside the house. Derek went to run but couldn't. A mixture of remorse and fear fixed him to the spot. His neighbour appeared at the window and opened it. "Oh, good God! Look what that monster's done!" A doctor in a white coat came to take Derek away. And true to the skull's word, Derek never saw him again. But that was because Derek was mentally ill, and it had never existed in the first place. And the dog was fine.
The Dark Hour. Forced intimacy on your ears since 2009.